Okay, so I wanted to have this talk and just talk about human rights. I mean, I've been a human for 20 years and I have never known what my rights are. I mean, I hear a little bits of drabs here and there, but I've never actually sat down and discussed it. So I'm glad that we've all come together from different walks of life to talk about human rights here, all through Europe and then throughout the world in general. I wanted to kick it off with the basic question, which is, what do you know your rights? Does anyone here have an idea what it is?
I'm going to say I don't know all of them. I just understand that my right as a human being is to, no matter what I am or who I am or what I prescribe to, I have the right to express it and voice it and live it. That's all I understand of it, and that's the most basic way I understand it.
I know that everyone's got the right to freedom and things like that, but how it actually applies into this day and age, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
I had to write a poem about it, and I was like, I stopped researching because I didn't know what they were. And then when I was researching, I came to find that women, like our human rights, didn't really abide by them.
Is there a list? Like, is there a definitive list of what rights we have as humans? And
I think there is. It's like the United Nations definition or something like
We
that.
actually have the
Yeah.
list,
International Charter of Human Rights, like drafted like after World War II, I think, between Cold War and World War II.
Yeah,
And that defines like there's like 12 basic rights, I think, and then there's a rest of a very big list.
Yeah, there's
all the
well, that's what we need to be teaching in schools.
And Dawkins has actually got a list on the web now, trying to just shoot through them really quickly.
there's 30 universal declarations of human rights. Do you want to read all of them?
13? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
like really quickly.
Pretty quickly, go!
We are all free and equal. Don't discriminate. To the right to life, no slavery, past and present, no torture. We all have the same right to use the law. We are all protected by the law. Fair treatment by fair courts. No unfair detainments. The right to trial. Innocent until proven guilty. The right to privacy. Freedom to move. The right to asylum. The right to a nationality. Marriage and family. Your own things. Freedom of thought. Free to say what you want. Meet where you like. The right to democracy. The right to social security. Workers' rights. The right to play. A bed and some food. The right to education. Culture and copyright. A free and fair world, our responsibilities, and nobody can take away these rights and freedoms from us.
So hearing that, do you feel we have all the rights that we need? No.
I would have to say, living in the UK at the moment, I don't think so, according to that list.
Okay.
It seems as though the more money you've got, the more rights you have, or the more your rights are practiced with the more money you have. You know, you could have two white women. One could be in Russia, really, really poor poverty. One could be in America or somewhere really rich country, and on paper, technically speaking, they should both have the same rights, and they should, both be allowed so much and that sort of thing. It doesn't happen, and I think it comes down to money really. But
Yeah.
In 2012, if I'm not mistaken, UK was found to be violating on a daily basis human rights, but it was applied to the prisoners that were held as supposed terrorists in Guantanamo Bay. So we're an economy, we're quite a wealthy country. We may not be kind of doing it to our residents and our citizens, but we're doing it to other people in the name of protecting the world and caring about the world.
So speaking from your individual personal experiences, do you feel that your own human rights have ever been violated?
Yeah.
Can you give an example? Are you comfortable with an example? Or share?
Yeah, I mean, like every time we go back to America and cross like the border, you technically have the right to move freely. But in America, every time you cross the border, that is violated. I got almost detained for like 2 hours once just because some guy didn't give me back one of those papers with me in the airplane. So I didn't lose it, they lost it, and I got like put on those rooms, question and question and question and question for 2 hours. But I wasn't detained properly, but I was said, stay here, do not move, wait for us.
Sometimes I kind of think maybe we take it for granted because we live in a society where we kind of tend to, just kind of go, oh yeah, we're all right, and just kind of take it for granted. But if we were to go into a situation or a country, or even things might change in the UK or in Britain, then we might realise, like, oh yeah, it is being violated. Hang on a minute, you know, do we need to say something? Do we need to kind of, you know, talk about this? What's going on? I think it's taking it for granted.
Okay, so do you ever feel like your human rights have been violated?
Well, yeah, because like one of the points in the basic human rights are discrimination, and I was researching and I found that in Hollywood they don't like, audiences don't like to see interracial couples. I don't know why, because I thought everyone was like so happy together. But yeah, like apparently like the ratings will go down if they see interracial couples, and made me realise I actually haven't really seen much interracial couples in movies.
I see it as, if we look at the different cultures that people have, so say for example, the whole offensive thing, do you know, like, oh, this country might think it's offensive or it's not like this, then we look at all those religion then plays into it, or that kind of thing. So I don't know, it's sort of something that you sort of play about with. It's just something I wanted to throw out there.
I mean, has anyone else, I mean, I remember there was an article I read where Star Trek, which I've never seen a day in my life, actually broke ground where they showed the first ever interracial kiss on TV. And if anyone, does anyone remember what year that was? Was it 1960?
It was the first ever sort of Star Trek,
interracial kiss, and that was in the 60s. Like, why did it take so long to get there? It was just so, because 1960, I mean, I understand it was a long time ago, but still, looking at where we are now, where we still do not see interracial couples in the spotlight, and I'm really trying to rack my brain and think if I've seen any type of interracial couple anywhere, but I really can't. Okay, do you think that all Europeans should have the same rights, same human rights, no matter what country they live in? Because it is kind of differs with each country.
Technically speaking, in practice and in theory, yeah, doesn't matter where you are in the world, doesn't matter who you are in the world, you should be given the same rights.
Do you believe religions respect human rights?
The thing with religion, I find, is that a lot of it teaches about being a good person, about loving each other. That is right up the alley of human rights, you know, theoretically. But again, it's when it's not practiced, it's abused.
I don't agree, because, because, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but I was brought up as a Hindu and grew up in a sort of Hindu culture. But Hindu religion and its culture has been responsible for so many human rights violations because of the caste system. If they are a priest and they're a priest class, they're gods. Nobody else is entitled to the status that they hold. Everybody in between is kind of okay, but the people right at the bottom, who are called the Dalits, and in some cases called pariahs, don't have any rights at all, not even in India. And it's sad because Gandhi kind of tried to change it and tried to get India to see it in a different way, and even he failed. You can't walk into certain villages, you have to take your slippers off and walk because you're a Dalit. You can't come into my house because you're a Dalit. You can't come into the school, you have to sit at the back because you're a Dalit. And I ain't gonna bother teaching you. That's horrible. To grow up for generations, for decades, for centuries, in fact, it's written in Hindu scripture.
Sometimes, like when you have, especially coming from Africa and where there's a lot of Christians and kind of thing, sometimes people see that priest as if they're a god. It's a person. Do you know, at the end of the day, they may have, you know, that sort of like call to do this particular work or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're a human being, right? That, you know, there's no sort of, that's what people, that's what like, when you become in that sort of manner, so like going, right, I trust this person, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's sort of like, it's you and God, you know, there's no whatever. That person is a person. Or yes, you can go there and get some advice, whatever, but people are going to be people.
The flip side of it is you might get some people that are so religious and got so much faith in their God and whatever, that they take on the lessons that we see as good, and they take on the lessons of treating people with respect, not discriminating. All those things that we're talking about today, that religion helps them to be a better person.
Yes, Giles.
I just want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Did you ever get smacked as kids?
Yeah.
I did.
With wooden spoons and everything.
Do you feel that your rights as a child were violated?
Yes.
I don't think
No.
so.
Yeah,
I don't
No,
think so.
In the light of this topic, when you think about it, you think, well, hold on a minute, yeah, actually. But when, as a young adult, looking back on it, for discipline reasons and stuff, then I think, well, maybe I didn't. That's a tricky one.
So is an action of assault against an individual classed as discipline? When does it become
A violation.
a violation? And when is it discipline? There are many ways to discipline. Why does it have to be a physical discipline?
I think
There's I was just saying before, I think there's a difference between there's like there's a line. There's abuse and there's discipline. And I hear what you're
Who
saying.
draws the line?
Parent.
I think the individual draws the line. I mean, I think it's also cultural.
yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think it's also cultural.
Is
I
it
grew
1 to 10 smack on the scale?
Oh Lord, if I had to
say?
scale
Yeah.
my parents' discipline, it would be like off the scale. I think it's cultural because it's very cultural, and it's also generational. My parents came from a generation where they had probably had the same kind of upbringing, and nobody showed them any different, and that's what they thought was the right parenting.
I think it comes down to how a parent raises their child. I agree with that, it's cultural, but it's about whether it's within your rights to overstep that boundary.
It's what's not so much just socially acceptable, but how sensitive. This is such a sensitive area, because if I was to see, in many times, you know, you do get parents deaf and blind and maybe slapping their kids around the back of the head. I would never turn around, unless it was like, you know, ridiculously violent. I would never turn around to a mum or a dad and say to them, stop hitting your kids, or stop doing this, or stop doing that. Because then what it turns is an argument back to you as to, you shouldn't be looking at how I'm raising my kids.
And you shouldn't
Yeah,
interfere.
you shouldn't
blah, blah.
interfere.
I believe you should interfere.
Yeah, and do you know what?
I believe it's your
Yeah.
rights come with responsibilities. Human rights come with human responsibilities, but we fail to talk about the responsibilities sometimes.
Yeah,
Can I
no,
make
that's a
a
really
point?
good point.
Yeah, go on.
If you live next door to someone who's got a pet dog or something, and you know they're being abusive to the dog, say they're hitting the dog, you'd probably do something about that. So if you saw someone hitting their kid, why wouldn't you do something about that?
Thinking about children for a second, this is another topic that I'm also thinking on. Do unborn children have rights?
Yes.
They do.
When this question pops up, I always think myself as a unborn child. If I never got the chance to live the life I did, I'd just be so.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't know, but because I do know, I can put myself in the shoes of the non-existent. Like, if that makes sense.
Child who is unborn, there's the sort of in a nutshell.
Defining a thing unborn is very hard to do, because we start saying, okay, it's unborn, but technically cellular organisms are considered live things. Like extraterrestrial, for instance, Mars or whatever, you're looking for like the bacteria, and that's considered live. So I'm thinking, if you're going out of the planet Earth to look for things that are as small as an unborn fetus, and we're looking for that fetus must have at least the same importance to some degree.
Keith?
Yeah, I was going to say, when Giles was talking before about how, you know, I think, like, when we talk about, we don't really think about the responsibility with, you know, with how to punish let's say, a child in some way or something like that. But I think on the board of when we talk about human rights, it seems like that everything we're talking about are things to do with like intelligence. Like we assume that a fetus cannot think. So then why does that mean perhaps to some people that has less rights? Like does that mean that a plant is living, but then we eat and kill plants technically? So where are the plants' rights? So then does that mean we don't take responsibility for plants because they're just there and they're not directly connected to us?
When you talk about human rights in the sort of context that we're talking about it's not a means to survive, it's a means of discrimination, punishment, XYZ, whatever it may be.
Is it interaction with each other as a common species of all humans? So
I think it's more about...
it's trying to find the equality in each other, if that's the right step forward,
Amnesty International have recently applied for like a new right to be added to the final act, which is the right to refuse to kill. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that. Do you reckon that would be a good thing, or?
What? I think that's brilliant for countries that have national service, because in the past you have to... Norway, my brother-in-law, several times has dodged like national service, and it's because he said he doesn't believe in going to war, or he's a pacifist. He failed the test to the point that he kept failing every time he went, and eventually he was too old and he was in Australia studying, and they kind of just left him. But every young Norwegian has to spend some time in the army, and you get drilled into becoming a killing machine, whether you like it or not.
Usually, because if you get told to kill someone in war or whatever, you have to listen to those orders, and you have to follow through orders. And I think the right to refuse to kill means that you wouldn't be refusing orders, so to speak. I don't know, but
well, you would have to go against orders. If you're in the army and your ranking officer tells you to kill, you have to. And if you could,
punished for it.
You would
be.
Okay, come
You
on.
would be.
You can get court-martialed for that.
Yeah.
What's the Jazz?
It's been featured quite a lot lately. What about the right to die?
It's up to the individual again, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're in a place...
But in many contexts, it's completely illegal.
Suicide, euthanasia is illegal.
I don't think it's individual right. I think it's a shared right. I mean, to say in the future, hoping to get married, my wife gets very sick and she's a vegetable, and I got to spend 40 years of my life, 50 years of my life, 60 years. I may be well dead and she will be still attached to the machine. That goes back to the question of the fetus. Is that living? And she wouldn't be able to make the choice. Most likely, would it come down to me? Would it come down to my financial cost? I mean, in America, for instance, it would come down to my financial cost of capabilities, which would be very limited. So,
and people are always going to doubt your intentions as well, isn't it? I think intent, that's a thing about it, isn't it? The whole sort of, if there's an agenda, whether you're doing things for bad or good reasons or whatever it may be, but yeah, it lies down to the individual.
If there was a right to refuse to kill, do you not think everyone would use it, and then there would be no wars, and then there would...
No, I don't think people are going to do it if they want to. There's something in law called actus rea mentia. So if you have the intention to kill and then you carry it out, you've thought the process through, and then did it. The right not to kill can apply to countries where there are child soldiers, there are people that are forced into wars, there are people forced into gangs, there are people forced into situations where they have to kill to live.
Do you find that the people that would most benefit from that law are probably going to be the people that are the least likely to hear about it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's an Amnesty International agenda, so it is going to be for those people that are more likely not to hear about it.
I've got one last question. Now, I've just made this up on the spot. We know that all human rights are very, very important. All of them, they serve a purpose that we need to even get by. But in your mind, is there one human right in particular that stands out to you as the most important? You're not.
For me, maybe stupid internet access. So I think through that, you can almost guarantee the right of freedom of expression, organization, and by that, finding out things and getting informed and fighting against oppression, so freedom again, and also getting informed choices about life.
I think for me, following on from that, it has to be the right to have a voice, a platform to have a voice, to be able to speak, to be able to say what I think, to be able to say what I need and what needs changing, to be able to express my disgust or my elation at something. I think that's important.
Mine's women's rights. I'm very sort of pro girl power. Not now, that's a massive generalisation. It's just about embracing your sexuality, embracing who you are, embracing your gender, all that sort of stuff, and
live the life you love
being
and live the life you
responsible,
live.
knowing yourself. And
Just taking on that, like, just the whole thing, like, again, living in this patriarchal society where men still dominate those particular countries. And for me, it's more of like, okay, what a woman does. Oh, you're in the kitchen, or you're this, or you're there. Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't be doing this particular job because it's a man's job.
I'd say it's wrong to say that they belong there, but when you strip everything down, if us human beings as cavemen, men would go out, find the food, women would look after the children and the cooking. It's just the way it was. It's just assign the job, whoever's, you know what I mean? It's a case of a sort of maybe efficiency or effectiveness. But whether to say a woman belongs in the kitchen, it's completely out of touch, of course. But I think also as women or men or individuals, maybe it's sex and gender's got nothing to do with it. You should just accept sort of your role in society or the world as who you are.
You said when you said freedom of speech, right? I realised that do you know, like, some news channels, they don't show like the whole of someone's opinions, or they like cut it down so it looks weird, and that's like completely against like the rights.
That's going into media. Like I've learned that learning because I studied journalism at uni, and kind of what we're trained to do is to learn how to take certain parts of what people say and the quotes they give us and almost flip that completely out of context. But that is all the questions I have. Thank you all for sitting around and having a talk. There are more spoken words. I have not heard this. Ooh, I'm excited. Sorry, that's a secret.
Human rights. Yet they send people to fight in spite of the fact that they agreed on points that should affect our lives positively. But why is it that we live in a time lacking positivity? Frankly, the policy that I see is the constructive function of corruption covered in deep cushioned and fragrance lotion, force-feeding us their pathetic distortions. The way I see it is that I see past your discreet, dark, sweet plate filled with unprincipled plans against me. You see, one who craves doesn't see the picture clearly, but that's not me. I had the power to enforce communal liberty when you give me the freedom of thought and speech. This is the start of human rights done correctly.